Well, I'd like to go ahead and welcome everybody to the June 1st, 2022 Town Hall meeting. It's hard to believe we're in the month of June already. You know, Memorial Day weekend is past, one more Indianapolis 500 for myself and my son. You know, we've been to quite a few of those. It was an absolutely beautiful day as we went to it. The weather was fantastic. So we had a lot of fun. I got to take my brother and his fiance to the race with us. So we've enjoyed that over the years. And it's one of those family traditions that we look at during this time of the year. And that's what we have to look at with everybody out there. What family traditions do you have? Now, where are you looking at? Do we need to get the family together? We had a couple years with the pandemic and we put off maybe some of those family reunions. It might be a time to go ahead and get those back going again. Again, I'm going to start out. I'd like to thank everybody for the referrals they've given us. The Aul Financial Group has grown exponentially over the last year to 2 years because of people like you that have referred family and friends. And I do want to let everybody know, if you missed this week's weekly update, that I did become a grandfather in the month of May. On May the 21st, Megan and Constantine brought Mary Violet into the world. She was a couple weeks early. She's not a very big baby, but her and mama are doing very, very well. So we've got one more new advisor on the staff. She doesn't do the meetings real well at this point, but you know, hey, I've got pictures and I can be a good grandpa when it comes to that. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off. Deanna, are you ready? You're on mute. You're not on mute. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you.
Sure, that's fine.
And then let me get it so security so that you can share a screen if you want to. So
Okay,
I'm going to
great.
go ahead and mute. Miss Deanna, go ahead and give us a talk on what you would like to talk about today.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, you know, the the focus right now and chatterboxes and all of your media pundits is on what's the Fed going to do and what's going on with inflation, and we're in market bear territory, and everyone from the headlines, you'd think that we're experiencing Armageddon because that's what they want you to feel. They want you to feel like things are crashing. That's how they grab your attention. So, you know, there are some very real threats going on right now. And it's one of the reasons why as financial planners who focus primarily on your cash flow planning when you're going into retirement, you know, we're allocating a portfolio for your lifetime, not for today, not for today's headlines, not for the next year, not for the next 5 years. You know, we hope that you're living a nice, long, extended retirement. So your assets have to last as long as you do. And with this inflationary pressure that we're experiencing right now, if you sit solely on the sidelines and cash, you're losing buying power every day. We like to use the analogy that you will go broke very safely. So there's this balance of how much do you have in the market to stay ahead of inflation. And then you see these headlines of markets pulling back, and it's like, well, how is that keeping me ahead of inflation? Because we're looking at it in the short term. You know, we're looking at the in a myopic vision of our portfolio, and we shared it a couple of weeks ago, and the guys liked it, so I'm going to repeat it again. You're watching the yo-yo. You're watching this yo-yo in your portfolio, and you're climbing the mountain. That's your long-term plan. And markets over the long term have kept pace with and surpassed inflation. It's one of the reasons why we include it as part of an overall allocation in your plan. Now, that being said, we also have to plan for the short term. Money that you're going to need in the short term needs to be relatively stable so that we have access to it. That can be cash. it's okay to have cash. It's good to have an emergency fund. The question is how much. We get asked that a lot, and it varies, right? From individual to individual. It depends on your other income streams, and your cash flow planning is a part of that discussion as to how much we need to keep in cash, and then how much we need to have for that later money. That's your growth oriented money. And in a perfect world, instead of focusing on returns, just focusing on returns, our practice focuses on how can we smooth out your cash flow in retirement? How can we provide you some safety and stability so that you can stop watching what the market is doing on a day-to-day basis? Now, that being said, we're watching it, right? We're looking for opportunities, and every market challenge creates different opportunities. And those are the things that we're trying to do right now for our clients is, does it make sense to shift some out of your safety bucket into the market and take advantage of the sales that are going on? Maybe that could make sense for your situation. You know, it depends on individual to individual. Where can you put your cash that isn't tied up if you need that liquidity without the strings? There are lots of options to find safe returns outside of bonds to provide that liquidity. And we share those ideas with our clients as well. So instead of focusing strictly on the market volatility that we're certainly experiencing right now, we want to focus on the areas that we can control. And we want to look for the opportunities. And we also want to try and re-examine our own cash flow needs so that we don't have too much sitting on the sidelines, so that we're not going broke safely. You can't have too much idle cash. How can we put that to work for you, and where should we put that to work for you? And how much growth do we need to achieve our own individual goals? And that needs to go into the equity and growth side. And then there's a whole myriad of options in between those two spectrums to try and design this portfolio that meets what you are trying to accomplish. And I did grab something else. Let me see if I can share my screen. You know, the concern is that, you know, the Fed is going to mess all this up. And, you know, they are increasing rates, and they do intend to continue increasing rates. And it's that tightrope walk, right? And markets have been distorted for a very long time. And it's important to understand that the Fed views things very differently than Wall Street does. And I thought this was an interesting chart as far as the Fed increasing rates. They're looking at, you know, that there's lots of room between what we've gained in 2020 to today. That's where they're looking at, you know, there's still an opportunity to increase rates without disrupting demand or damaging the demand in our markets. And so they're not looking at the day-to-day volatility. And it's something that, you know, we're telling you not to look at the day-to-day volatility. We'll do that for you. We're going to look for opportunities and pockets of values and things possibly to take advantage of. But I thought this was interesting, you know, that the Fed does see things, as where I'm looking at, very differently than Wall Street or retail investors. The market has declined, but the markets are still higher than they were in 2020. So they still see that room. Okay, they still see that room, and they're trying to prevent that runaway inflation. And again, it's that tightrope walk. They use a lot of levers to manipulate, and we love them when they throw stimulus, and they kept us afloat for the pandemic, right? Then they were our heroes, and right now they're the villains, because they're increasing the rates too quickly, or not quick enough, or, everyone's can call the game in reverse, right? But this was something else that I wanted to leave you with, again, focusing on what we can control. And inflation has stayed low for a very, very long time. And this commentary focuses really on our quality of life. Her name is Barbara Stanny, if you ever get a chance to look her up. And it's like, we're trying to help you enjoy the resources that you have throughout retirement without this gut-wrenching markets that we're experiencing and worried about your inflation. Well, stress has a real negative effect on your retirement as well. So is it time to start worrying? She says, heavens no. So fear has a paralyzing effect. And this was her tip. And I will read it to you because I thought it was excellent. You want to look at rising inflation as a call to action, no matter how much or how little money you have. The only way to counter rising prices is to make sure that at least some of your savings is working harder than it would in a bank. How? By investing in assets that grow faster than what inflation takes away. Again, we said if you're sitting in cash, you're going to go broke safely. Make sure that your money is allocated according to your needs, not somebody else's. Stop looking at the rules for everybody else. We're focusing on the rules for you. There's no cookie cutter here. Money you need in the next 3 to 5 years. We need more stable value so that we have access to it. Money you're going to need in the next 5 to 10 years. We want some growth there. And money that you're not going to need for 10 years or more. We need that in growth. And we need to stop looking at those day-to-day fluctuations in that longer term money. So I hope this helps put things in perspective and reduce some of that gut-wrenching fear or anxiety that you're experiencing. We do get some calls and we are always available to help you understand your current economy. But hopefully this helps you take a more wider view of what's going on and not focusing just on the day-to-day noise. So that's what I had for you guys today.
I thank you very much, Miss Deanna. And then Mel, I'm gonna go ahead and turn second segment over to you.
All right, I have something to share too, and it is a continuation of a theme that we've talked about a lot for a very long time, but things have changed dramatically recently. As most of you know or may know, we do talk about using life insurance as a financial tool, and specifically the indexed universal life. The thing that has changed dramatically is what's happening in Washington today. And quite honestly, many of our tax provisions are now targeting your IRAs, 401ks, and Roths and other retirement vehicles. The interesting way they put it here got me, this really grabbed me. In my opinion, Congress has shifted from incentivizing Americans to save for the future to penalizing Americans for having successfully saved. And if they're going to do that, then they have targets, they have caps, they have points at which they're going to make adjustments. One of the things that people don't realize, with IRAs, Roths, and 401ks, if they decide to change the legislature, if the legislature decides to make a rule change, it is automatic and instantaneous. It may start this year or first of next year, but that's it. Once they've decided to do it, it's done. It's a matter of when they want to turn it on. So we've increased our legislative risk associated with traditional and Roth retirements. If you guys want a copy of this particular white paper, just let us know and I'll make sure that someone sends it out to you. But let's just go through a few things. We already know that there's a lot of things happening in the government that are going to increase our taxes. And with that in mind, let's look at a few things. One of the things that have been proposed is for retirees that have more than $10 million in qualified and Roth combined, they must each year withdraw from their accounts 50% of the excess over the 10 million and put it as normal taxable accounts. In other words, no more tax-free, no more tax deferred. You're going to pay taxes on anything over half. Well, gee whiz, I don't have 10 million. Well, some of you guys are in a position where with reasonable growth over the next 5, 10, 15 years, you very well could have that much. But here's the thing, that's an arbitrary number. What have you seen in the past when it comes to how Congress works? If they name a big number like that, how long does it stay a big number, or how long does it filter down? Here's another one. For couples that are filing jointly that have an income in excess of $450,000, then Roth conversions from qualified accounts would be prohibited. Well, what's to say they wouldn't make that 200,000? I mean, it's whatever they decide, right? So you're exposed to a legislative risk in which they've already talked about doing these things, and it's just a matter of degree. And with inflation, how many of you thought you'd be living off your current incomes or your current paychecks 10 years ago or 15 years ago? Think about the difference in pay today versus then. Well, now advance that 10 or 15 more years and think about how much it might take. When we do your planning and we look at our software, excuse me, then we look at an inflationary cost of living, and it gets pretty amazing how much money we'll need 10 or 15 years down the road to live the same way we do today. So you have to apply that to the growth of your assets also, and the taxable income. And if they change the tax rates and marginal brackets, you're paying more taxes on less money, and you can't do anything to protect it. That's where the aim seems to be going. As we work to mitigate legislative risk in our retirement approaches, we must consider that not just the provisions being discussed today, but how those provisions may develop, expand, or change in the future. It's essentially true for qualified and Roth accounts, especially true for qualified and Roth accounts, where the new laws can take immediate effect. Okay, so how do we protect ourselves? What are some of the things that we can do to maybe soften the risk of that legislative risk? Because we don't know whether they'll make it 10 million, 8 million, 5 million, or 3 million. We're totally open to their discretion on that. And they've acknowledged that the provisions in a lot of these bills for expanding healthcare, all these different things, and the environment, and just a whole myriad of expenses, especially social stuff, they have really little tricky things going on, because they say, well, these will expire in a few years. Well, as you may know from experience, once a benefit has been added, how hard is it to get rid of it? How often do they go back and get rid of a new tax? Well, it's only going to be for 6 months. It's only going to be for 5. Yeah, hogwash. We all know that once it's in, it's in. It's going to stay there, and it will probably be expanded. And they know they're going like zero cost dollars for these plans. Yeah, well, that means you're definitely going to have to go find some new money somewhere, because they're not going to get rid of those benefits. So simply put, there's every reason to believe that Washington will be searching for more tax revenue in the near term, and recent congressional debate shows retirement accounts are a key place for Congress to look. So what the heck are we going to do? If Roth accounts are susceptible to legislative changes along with ours, well, they just proved that with the Secure Act of 2020 and then Secure 2.0. They've changed how Roths work. A law can be changed by the legislature and take immediate effect. Well, where are the possibilities? Let's go through a couple of things. We've used index universal life policies as a cash value tool for a long time, but I'm about to tell you some real big reasons why, if I got a choice between doing a Roth conversion and using the index universal life, I'm going to tell you a really strong reason why you should be considering using the index universal life instead. Okay, not just in conjunction with, but flat out instead of. The reason for that is that life insurance cash values and life insurance policies are contracts. They are not a law. They are a contract between you and a private company. Changing contract law is entirely different than simply changing a law and adjusting timing frame. It is a completely different thing. And life insurance is set up under Title 7702. It's a different section of the code. It's not a 401k or an IRA or a Roth. It's a completely, it actually predates all of those. And we've seen in the past where they've made changes. What happens generally, if they make a change in a contract, they say, okay, you've been doing it this way. From now on, new ones have to do it this way, this new way. But the ones that already are in play get to stay the way they are. That's a pretty strong indicator that if we're trying to avoid the legislative risk that is associated with Roths, IRAs, 401ks, if I do it in a life insurance program and I get it done, it's likely to stay that way and not be affected by changes in the contract. That's pretty darn difficult for them to do. And I'll tell you another pretty big one. Remember that 4 million, 5 million, or 450,000 and all that stuff where they might come in and say, you can no longer do Roth conversions, or you can no longer have those monies. If you get more than a certain amount, you have to give it up. Life insurance cash values don't apply in that number. Let me say that again. The cash value in the life insurance policies, forgot where that was at in this particular scenario. They are not counted in that $5 or $10 million thing right there. It is not counted towards the Congress's arbitrary cap on assets under this bill. Whether that cap ultimately ends up at 10, 5, or any other amount, it's an excluded asset. So there's another way to protect you from the tax raises, because we can take money on a tax advantaged basis from the life insurance policies if we do it right. We pass it on to our heirs as income tax free. It's one of the last bastions that allow you to leave assets through a generation to your grandchildren. You can't do that with a Roth or an IRA anymore specifically, but you can with life insurance. And the fact that you are insulated from future potential changes in legislature where we're subject to a simple law change that goes into effect immediately, and you're protected under contract law, it really does remove you an awful lot from the risk. And interestingly enough, in all of the discussions about all of the things they want to change, not once was life insurance talked about or mentioned as a potential change for increasing taxation, as a target for taxation. So that ought to give us a pretty good idea of where things ought to be. We've seen it happen before. So one thing's pretty clear to me, as Becky here wrote this thing, the legislative risk facing qualified Roth accounts is significantly higher today than it has been at any time in recent memory. And if you aren't prepared, you may not be protected. So even if we've discussed using life insurance as a part of your financial planning tools in the past, and we decided against it for one reason or the other, we might want to revisit. We just might want to go back and see if maybe because of the things that may be occurring in the near future with Congress and the legislature, we might want to add it in as another protected asset. That is my thing for today.
All right. Thank you very much, Mel. And then always the reminder, because when we do talk about this on occasions, people say, well, I'm not insurable. We also look at it to the fact that it's a very nice tool that can be used on our children instead of putting it on ourselves, because I can tell you, as a 63-year-old male that's had cancer in the past, my insurance costs are much higher than my 30-year-old children. And I can still control that asset if I decide to. I can still control the asset. So it might not fit exactly for you, but it could fit as that generational tool because of what Mel talked about, the legislative. We've taken away a lot of the availability to pass assets to grandchildren, multi-generational transfer of assets. So don't think of it just on yourself. It could be a very strong tool on passing assets to our children. I'm going to go to a couple different things here. I'm going to jump in kind of where Deanna started with, be careful about the headlines. And I look at the fact I can pull up the headlines today, and I looked at it. You know, Dow Jones future market retreats on economic data and hurricane. Now we're going to have an economic hurricane. I can go to another one. why a top Wall Street sees the S&P 500 coming back and can recover all its losses by year end. You know, you're going to be able to find whatever you're looking for in the news. If you think and you want to have that idea that we are going to have negative markets, you're going to have economists that say that's a true statement. If you're going to think or look at things that say that it's all coming back by the end of the year, you can see those things also. So that's what I'm saying. Be careful with the news. Be careful with the headlines. We don't want to overreact. The idea that we look at it is give me that long-term plan. Keep the focus on the long term, and we'll adjust the portfolios as we come through it. A couple of the things that I wanted to cover today. One of the things that was mentioned and has been redone, the average couple between their Medicare premiums and their expenses will spend approximately $315,000 on healthcare during their lifetime. Those are the average numbers that come out. So that's one of the things that we might want to look at. I always challenge it. If we don't have somebody else paying for long-term care, what are we using? I'm going to say that's why I got in the industry, because my parents were not talked about with long-term care or long-term care exposure. And the long-term care plan that my parents had prior to me getting into this industry was, which asset are we going to sell of moms and dads so that we could keep mom in the nursing home? So those are the things that we're going to look at. Can we shift that expense to somebody else, or should we? We also talked about inflation earlier today. There are some expectations that are being brought out that Social Security may increase by as much as over 8% this year. We won't know the exact number on that until later in October, but we have to look at it. I'm doing a presentation this evening on Social Security and when is the best time to take Social Security. One of the reminders in it, if you've looked at your Social Security estimates and you're not taking it yet, those estimates do not reflect inflation. So if you've got questions around your Social Security, or if you know somebody that has questions about Social Security, please don't hesitate to have them give us a call. The idea around it is most people think it's a very simple thing, but in the low interest rates environments, those dollars that are coming out of those Social Security accounts are very, very strong dollars for people as they're entering their retirement years. Mel talked about it, Roth conversions. I look at this, the time that the market's down, my crystal ball's still broken. It's not there. I'm not sure if we hit the bottom. You know, after 7 weeks of negative returns, we had our first week positive. Is it going to go straight back up? I don't know. I don't think it probably will. Usually we retest those lows before the market goes in a different direction. So we're looking at it. Some of that money that we took off the table last year, put into the fixed indexed annuity so that it could not go down due to market volatility. It might be time to bring some of that back into the market. It might be time to look at Roth conversions if they were already in our plans and convert now while the markets are lower. We can also take the dollars for that Roth conversion and move it towards the index universal life that Mel was talking about. That's what I have done with my personal accounts over the last few years. The premiums that I pay on my personal accounts for my index universal life come from an IRA account. I have to pay the taxes, and then the net goes into the index universal life. So those are some of the tools that we're looking at. I'm going to finish up the day by talking about the movie Top Gun Maverick. I've gotten some reviews from some of the clients that said they saw it last weekend. They're sorry they can't make it. But again, we are giving a complimentary tickets to Top Gun Maverick. It's going to be at the Marcus Theater down in the Chesterfield Valley. The movie starts at 1:30 this Saturday. If you would like tickets for that, please give us a call. We have a limited number of tickets available. If you'd like to bring a couple people with you, we don't have a problem with that. You can sign up for those online. If you'd like to bring more than 2 guests, we do ask that you contact the office for that. So again, Top Gun Maverick will be showing 1:30 on Saturday. We're asking people to get there 10 to 15 minutes early. We have other events that are going to be coming up through the year. And, watch the website, watch these town halls. They will be announced during that time frame. So if you have any questions, again, please do not hesitate to call the office. That way we can go over things. If you've got the headlines, I have one client, I know she's going to be coming in a couple of weeks, and she'll bring me 5 to 10 different headlines and ask my opinion on them. And I'm okay with that. So if you got any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call. And again, I would like to say thank you for all of the people that have been referred to us for family and friends. The family here at the Aul Financial Group is growing exponentially. And my personal family is growing too, because the one thing I didn't say, that my son got engaged about 2 weeks ago. So we're looking at really expanding the Aul family itself. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you being a part of the family.